Well, as it stands right now, the federal government seemingly does not have the support it needs to pass its budget. Before MPs vote on Monday, the finance minister is urging his colleagues on all sides of the aisle not to bring down the government.
People understand that we need to meet the moment. This is not a time for political games. This is not a time for posturing. This is a time to fight for Canada. Fight together, meet the moment, elevate yourself above politics. Like I said, I think there must be a number of colleagues who will do a bit of soul-searching over the weekend.
Okay, so what can we expect from the official opposition? Let's ask Adam Chambers. He's an Ontario Conservative MP and a Conservative Party international trade critic. Adam Chambers, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me, David.
Are you going to take Minister Champagne's advice and do some soul-searching over the weekend to see if you can come to peace with this budget and vote in favor?
Well, soul searching is a very deep, deep request, reflective request from the finance minister. The searching that I've been doing in Ottawa recently is the money tree that Minister Champagne seems to think exists and bears perpetual fruit. We've indicated to the government a number of suggestions on how they could have earned Conservative supports for the budget. Was about having a lower deficit, some additional investments we had recommended, some additional enhancements to ideas that Liberals already had in terms of GST off of new homes, for example. You know, they're limiting it to just first-time home buyers. We said that should be to everybody. So Conservatives actually put forward some ideas that we hope that the government would take us up on. They have not done that. And given the fact that they've blown past their own deficit target, you know, they ran on a $62 billion deficit in the election, and now we're up almost at $80 billion just this year. So we've been very clear about our expectations and our intentions, and that's where we are. Although in your earlier panel, people mentioned they need to find 2 votes. There are multiple parties that the government could work with in order to find those 2 votes.
Right. And look, and I understand it is the government's job to get something that gets the confidence of the House. But, you know, it's your job as Conservatives to look out for the best political interests of the Conservative Party. And I wonder if that's an election right now at this moment. Are you willing to take steps to vote against the budget in a show of force, but not necessarily force Parliament to fall and go into a Christmas election? Where's your thinking on that?
I would say, just on your premise, I would say our primary objective isn't the political interests of the Conservative Party. I think our primary objective is to make sure that we're advocating on behalf of Canadians for the things that they have told us that they want to see. You know, we did just finish election 6 months ago. Right. The things that many Conservatives heard at the door across this country, even in ridings in which we were unsuccessful, there is still a large number of people who want to see affordability as the primary concern that is being addressed by the government. And additionally, you know, deficits and these endless deficits that have really no end in sight create challenges for the next generation, but as well, in some cases, drive up prices today for people.
Right. Okay. If I said primary objective, I didn't necessarily mean it was your primary, but it is a factor you have to consider. But it sounds like, based on what you've just said and what your leader has said, that you tend to vote en masse and perhaps with unanimity against the budget on Monday. Yes, that's where it is?
Well, my expectation, you know, for me, I'm showing up. I will be voting no on Monday in order to pass the budget for the reasons we've described. I expect that my colleagues would be in the same position. I have not heard otherwise from anyone. You know, I'm not on the leadership team, but our expectation is that we will be voting no, as we have outlined publicly and very consistently over the last number of weeks, if not months.
Okay, look, I want to get to the major project, but one quick question on just, are you comfortable that the unrest in the caucus has settled and that everybody who's a Conservative now will be a Conservative on Monday and doing whatever it is you're going to do as a party with the budget?
I think that's right. I mean, all the Conservatives caucus members that I've been in touch with, you know, we want to make sure we get back to Ottawa. We're working on the issues that affect the country, that speak to Canadians, whether that's crime, whether that's housing, whether that's affordability. Like, we are united in making sure we're holding this government accountable to deliver on those things that we've been hearing matter to Canadians. Okay,
so look, we got the second round of the major projects, or projects that are being referred to the Major Projects Office, to be considered and helped to the process to maybe get to a designation as a project of national interest. I know the criticism from your leader and your party has been that this is just more bureaucracy and it doesn't do anything to help things, but we got an explanation from Don Farrell, who's running this, on how they can help speed things up, turn a 6-year permitting process into a 2-year process. I know it is a new government agency, but it seems intent on cutting through some of the red tape. What do you make of what we learned about this yesterday and the value it may bring?
I would say 3 quick points. The first is the fact that we have to create, or the government has proposed that they need to create a parallel process in order to get projects done in the country is an admission that the existing process just isn't working. So I would say that that's the primary objection to this, new bureaucracy or this new process, that, we are not dealing with the fundamental problems that exist in the existing permitting process and the regulatory burden in order to get projects built. The second would be, which I think could be a future criticism of the government as well, is how does a project end up in the fast-track list? How do you get that golden ticket in order to get that permitting process down to the shortened period of time? I think for a government who may be sensitive to accusations of conflicts of interest at a future date, I think it'll just beg questions about how projects get onto the special fast track, and that will inevitably bring some questions. And finally, with respect to some of the projects announced yesterday, at least 4 of the 5 include federal government money in some form, whether that's a loan guarantee or some kind of financing or bottom line, a subsidy. I think the government's creating and sending the wrong signal in the market that the only way to get things done in the country is you have to get into the special process, and that also comes with government money. You're then going to find every project that wants to get done begging to be on the special list and then also begging for public money. I think that is not the signal that we want to be sending the market. We want to create investable conditions under which private sector proponents are willing to take on these projects. We should not be saddling the taxpayer with some of the risk. I think what may end up happening in these circumstances is the government will socialize the losses, i.e. the government will take the first loss, but the gains will be privatized by corporations. I don't think that's the environment that we should be trying to create in the country. We need to be creating an environment where all projects, big, small, large, ones that are long, different types, they all have a chance to go through a predictable process that is fair for everybody.
No, I take your point on the first one, because when I listened to Dawn Farrell's answer, and she explained how the office she's leading will help align permitting processes, that you can take a 6-year process down to 2. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. But then the reverse of that is that if you don't have the help of the office, then what could be a 2-year process remains a 6-year process. And that speaks to the challenges that companies have been complaining about. But we did hear from Canada Nickel CEO Mark Selby, part of the Timmins project, and he says this referral is actually going to help them get private capital, that it sends a signal to international investors and partners to get involved here, and it may draw capital to their project that otherwise wouldn't be there. So is there still value in it, even if it's not a perfect system?
Well, I would hope that if a government has said that they like a certain project, that would obviously be a selling point for some potential investors. But does that mean that all investors are now going to wait and only invest in projects that the government has now given a green light to through the Major Projects Office? I think this is yet another example of why we need to fix the underlying issues in the regulatory permitting process, and in order to create an environment where you have all these opportunities available to anybody, so long as they have, they go through the proper process, in a process that's predictable and fast, and one that is not dependent upon the government in order to give somebody the special green ticket.
Do you see a world, Adam Chambers, where the lessons they learn shepherding these projects through whatever this process is leads to that broader reform? I know there's a call to get rid of a mass array of regulations, but could these projects be the pace car that kind of bulldoze some of that?
David, you're very optimistic. I mean, the government has not said that yet. I mean, they could have easily said at the beginning or shortly after the election, look, we want to reform the overall process, but in the first 24 months or the first 18 months, here's what we're going to do. We want to get things going, so we're going to create this other track while we do the hard work of doing an overhaul review. Those are not the messages that the government's giving. I think had they been giving those messages, I think they would be in a little bit of a better position to say, that they are considering doing some of this reform. All indications suggest that they won't be doing that.
But they have talked about a red tape reduction, a red tape review, regulatory review. I've spoken to people in DFO and other places being tasked with overhauling the issues in sort of the Fisheries Act that limit development near water. So there is a process that is happening. It's just, is it large enough and is it public enough and fast enough, I guess?
I think if the process was going to yield substantial fruits, this government has shown itself to promise very high expectations, set very high expectations for itself. They have not been suggesting that the regulatory review is going to result in significant improvements. I hope, of course, that they do result in significant improvements, but I would think that they should be a lot broader and more ambitious than what they've indicated.
Okay. Conservative MP Adam Chambers, thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll talk to you next week, especially if we're in the middle of an election campaign. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thanks for having me again, David.